The incense in the great hall of High Rock always made me feel sick. Tonight it was worse. Heavy coils of myrrh and burnt sage hung beneath the vaulted stone, choking the air, trying and failing to cover the sense of nerves, ambition, and blood that clung to every alpha in attendance. I moved along the back wall with my head bowed, careful not to brush against the embroidered cloaks and polished armor that screamed rank. Omegas weren't meant to be seen here, not on a night like this. I pressed my thumb to the small iron charm at my throat, worn smooth by years of touch. My mother's last gift. Your strength isn't in teeth or rank, Lyra, she told me. It's in the part of you they underestimate. She had touched my chest over my heart. Never forget that. I tried to be small. Tried to be nothing. But tonight every pack in the 5 ranges had been summoned to witness the ascension blessing of the new Alpha King, Kale of the Four Moons, the war-forged ruler who'd ended a decade of territorial carnage. When a king like that commanded your presence, you came. Even if you were an Omega who'd survived by never being noticed. Breathe, murmured Finn at my side, his brown eyes flicking anxiously over the crowd. As a beta he stood taller, stronger, and infinitely more comfortable than I ever would among alphas. We'll stay at the back. Bow when they bow. Then run before some lord remembers Omegas make convenient gifts. My stomach twisted. We both knew what happened when an Omega caught the wrong eye. My sister had. Once. The drums thundered once, twice, thrice. The massive doors at the far end of the hall swung open. Silence fell so swiftly it rang. The royal procession entered in a spear of silver and black. First the High Guard, armor etched with moon sigils. Then 2 younger males, broad-shouldered and cold-eyed Kale's cousins. A woman followed, her braided hair threaded with iron, expression carved from ice, the king's aunt, Regent General Rhea, if the rumors were true. And then him. Alpha King Kale stepped into the hall and the air shifted. He wasn't as monstrous huge as the stories claimed, but there was something sharpened and lethal about him, as if battle had hammered him into a weapon that had simply chosen to walk like a man. Dark hair hit his shoulders in loose waves, his cloak fell in clean heavy lines, and his eyes, spirits above, amber like molten metal, catching torchlight and holding it. Alphas bent their heads as he passed. Some dropped to one knee. The pressure of his dominance rolled over us like a storm front. Every Omega in the hall felt it. The urge to kneel clawed up my spine, instinct shrieking submit, submit, survive. My knees dipped. I forced them straight. The king took the obsidian throne at the head of the hall. The priest of the moon court began his droning invocation: unity, victory, blood price, destiny. I barely heard him. My attention was hooked on the new king. Not his beauty or his power, but the fracture beneath it. His left hand flexed once on the armrest, jaw tightening as though against pain. A sheen of sweat ghosted his brow. He looked wounded. The Alpha King calls for traditional offerings, the priest intoned. Let each pack prove loyalty before the moon. My blood went cold. Traditional offerings. That could mean gold. Or land. Or Omegas. One by one, Alphas approached and bowed. Chests of coin. Carved weapons. Rare oils. It lulled me for a heartbeat into thinking we might all escape with dignity intact. Then the Frostbane Alpha strode forward. Terran, they called him. A hulking brute from the northern ice fields, beard full of silver rings, scars like pale ropes over his hands. My king! He boomed, voice slick with pride. I bring you the finest treasure of my lands. 2 warriors dragged a kneeling figure into the light. A girl. Younger than me by several winters. Copper-dark skin, black curls tangled, wrists bound. Her scent hit me, terror and Omega sweet. No! Slipped out of me, nothing but a breath. Terran fisted her hair, wrenching her head back so the king could see her wide, shining eyes. Pure Omega, he said. Trained to obey. A fitting tribute to grace your bed and prove Frostbane's devotion. The hall held a single, vicious heartbeat. I waited for Kale to smirk, to accept, to claim. It was how these things always went. Instead, the king's gaze narrowed, something dangerous flickering there. Release her. Murmurs crackled. Terran's grin faltered. My king? I said. Kale repeated, voice soft, all the more deadly for it. Release her. Terran hesitated. Squeezed too tight on her hair. She whimpered. And something in me snapped. Stop. The word tore free before I could catch it. Clear. Loud. Wrong. Dozens of heads turned. Finn's hand crushed around my wrist. Lyra! He hissed. No, no, no! Too late. The sound had cut across the hall, threading straight to the obsidian throne. Those molten amber eyes found me at the very back. Found and held. For a second, the rest of the world blurred. My pulse slammed in my throat. My Omega instincts screamed to drop my gaze, show my throat, apologize. I didn't. Bring her, the king said. Hands seized my arms. I stumbled through parting wolves, shoved into the wide aisle, dragged down it toward the throne under the combined weight of 100 stairs. Finn's strangled protest was swallowed by the crowd. Kneel, someone growled. I didn't. My legs shook, but I stayed standing. Kale rose. Power poured off him, slow and suffocating as smoke. Name, he said. Lyra of the Hollowridge Pack. I managed. A Hollowridge Omega, murmured someone. Pitying. Derisive. His gaze flicked to Terran, then back to me. You interrupt my ceremony to countermand my order, the Alpha King said. Explain. Carefully. The girl was still on her knees beside Terran, breathing too fast. My mother's charm burned at my throat. She is not a tribute, I said, voice shaking but clear. She is a person. An Omega. Your law does not name us livestock. Gasps. A few furious snarls. Terran spat. This whelp insults me and my gift. Silence, Kale said without looking at him, and the word hit like a blow. Frostbane's Alpha snapped his mouth shut, face mottling with rage. The king watched me the way a wolf watches a cliff edge he's tempted to leap. You assume much of my law, Lyra of Hollowridge. You promised an end to the old wars, I said, terrified of my own tongue. What worth is an Alpha King's peace if Omegas are still spoils? For a long, suffocating moment, nothing moved. Kale's nostrils flared, as if scenting for mockery or manipulation and finding only my raw fear. What would you have me do? He asked finally. With Frostbane's offering? Let her choose. The thought rose before I could temper it. Dangerous. Treasonous. True. Return her to herself, I said. Make it law that no Omega can be given or taken without their will. The priest choked. Terran snarled outright. My king, this girl shames. Terran, Kale said, at last letting his gaze slide to the northern Alpha. Did I ask your counsel? A hush sharp as a blade's edge. No, my king, Terran bit out. Release her, Kale repeated. The warriors obeyed this time. The Omega girl swayed free, clutching her torn sleeves. You, Kale said to her, voice losing none of its command. What is your name? Saran, she whispered. Saran of Frostbane, he said, the title itself an act of acknowledgement. You will remain here as a guest of the crown, with freedom to choose your own path when the blessing is complete. No wolf will lay claim to you. This I decree. Shock rippled through the hall. He turned back to me. For an instant, very quietly, he almost smiled. Lyra of Hollowridge, Kale said. You show either reckless courage or exquisite stupidity. Both, I said before survival sense could clap a hand over my mouth. A low, startled huff of laughter slipped from him. The moon blessing is at dawn, he went on, louder now, for all to hear. Tradition demands I stand within the circle with one who embodies the vows I will swear. Strength. Resolve. Vision. His stare pinned me like a spear. Stand beside me at the blessing. It wasn't really a question. The hall exhaled outrage, envy, shock. An Omega? Beside the king? Every instinct I had screamed to say yes, secure my safety, my pack's future. Instead, my mother's voice rose in memory. They'll never understand your strength. That doesn't make it less real. No, I said. The word fell like a stone into still water. A tremor went through the gathered wolves. She's dead, someone muttered. She's finished. Kale went utterly still. The torches seemed to burn quieter. No, he repeated, as if testing the shape of it. I swallowed, throat dry as bone. I won't be a symbol you can hold up when it's convenient, I said, soft but steady. Not while omegas in your lands still vanish as payment, and no one speaks. I won't stand in your circle so you can say, look, my omega, while nothing changes. Rhea, the iron-braided ant, stepped forward with a snarl. Allow me to remove this insolence from your sight, my king. Kale lifted a hand. She froze. His attention never left me. Frustration, curiosity, something wounded flickered behind his amber eyes. You think so little of my word? I think words are easy, I said. Even for kings. Laughter, harsh, disbelieving, bubbled from some noble. It died when Kale's power slammed down, sudden and suffocating. Insolence, Taryn hissed. Give her to me. I'll. Kale turned his head lazily toward him. Touch her, Frostbane, and you'll leave my hall without your hands. The northern alpha's mouth snapped shut. Kale stepped down from the dais. He came close enough that I could see the strain etched at the corners of his eyes, the tightness in his left shoulder. Pain. He was hiding an injury. Up close, his dominance was a physical thing, pressing on my skin, tugging at instinct. My knees trembled. Still, I met his gaze. You refused an alpha king, he said quietly, for me alone? Most alphas can't choke out no in my presence. I'm not most alphas, I murmured. I'm an omega who's tired of surviving by silence. Something in his expression cracked. A fine line through marble. Very well, he said, stepping back, voice rising to carry. The omega Lyra will not stand at my side tonight. Gasps. Smirks. But know this, he added, and the hall snapped taut again. She is under my protection. Any who move against her, or against Serana Frostbane, defy me. Power thrummed with the promise. A shield and a sentence in one. Finn sagged with relief. I wasn't sure I shared it. Being noticed by a king could be as deadly as being punished by one. Feast, Kale commanded, reclaiming his throne like he'd never left it. Music stuttered back to life. Servants hurried with wine. Conversations restarted in tight, shocked circles. I tried to slink away. A hand blocked me, gloved, scarred. A man in wolf-guard black bowed his head slightly. Lyra, he said. I am Captain Corin. The king has ordered chambers prepared for you and Saran in the East Tower. You are to move there under guard. Guard. My stomach clenched. So I am a prisoner. He almost smiled. Guess this important to attract enemies. I'd prefer to keep you alive. Finn whispered. Take it. Please. I thought of Taryn's eyes. Of the calculating stares already measuring my worth. Fine, I muttered. But only if Saran comes too. She is waiting, Corin said. And? Lyra? Yes? He searched my face with a veteran's cool assessment. However this ends, there are some in this castle who heard you tonight, Omega. Remember that. The rooms in the East Tower weren't gilded cages, exactly. Warm stone, thick furs, tall windows spilling moonlight over the distant forests, and jagged teeth of the mountains. Saran sat curled on a chair when I entered, clutching a mug of steaming broth like a lifeline. She sprang up when she saw me. You shouldn't have done that, she blurted. Frostbane won't forget. I know, I said. Are you all right? She nodded, eyes too shiny. Better than I would have been. Thank you. You won't be sent back, I promised. Not while I still breathe. Later, when Saran slept and Finn had been sent back to the Hollowridge quarters, I stood by the window, fingers resting on the cold stone. The great hall's lights flickered far below. I could almost feel the currents twisting through it: support, rage, intrigue, fear. A soft knock sounded. Captain Corrin opened the door without waiting for a reply. "The king requests your presence in the library at first light," he said. "He asked me to add that you may refuse a choice, or the appearance of one." "Tell him I'll come," I said. Sleep snagged at me in fits. My dreams were a tangle of iron crowns and reaching hands and my mother's voice whispering, "Say no when it matters." The palace library could have swallowed my entire village. Dawn spilled pale gold through tall windows, pooling over shelves upon shelves of books. Ink and leather and dust scented the cool air. Cale stood at one of the windows, cloak gone, black shirt unlaced at the throat, hair loose. In daylight without the crown, he looked less like a story and more like a man worn thin. The bandage wrapped around his left shoulder told me I hadn't imagined the pain. He turned as I entered. Captain Corrin took up position by the door. "No priests, no nobles, no witnesses." "You came," Cale said. "You asked?" I replied. "You said I could refuse. And yet—" His mouth twitched. "Sit." I chose a chair opposite his, spine straight. "If you brought me here to punish me in private, I'd prefer you just roar and get it over with." A low huff of amusement. "If I wanted you cowed, Lyra, I would not have placed you under my protection in front of half the realm." "Protection draws fire," I said. "And alphas who hate omegas now know my name." "They would have hated someone," Cale said. "Better their fury aim at one under my eye than at children in border villages." I stared. "You talk like a king who remembers what real fields look like." Amber eyes shuddered, then opened. "I do," he said. "Sit, and I will not waste either of our time with lies." He told me of the unification campaigns, warlords who sold omegas by the dozen, debt paid in daughters, packs raised because a single alpha had taken offense. "I ended them," he said. "But cutting off a wolf's head doesn't cure the hunger that drove it." "You became the hungriest wolf," I said. "Yes." No apology. No boast. Simple truth. "So I could change the laws that allowed such rot." I folded my arms. "And yet Terran marched into your hall and tried to give you a breathing tribute." His jaw tightened. "I have not yet had my blessing. The old still stain our courts. I had hoped to drag the worst customs into daylight and cut them down publicly. You forced my hand sooner." "You're welcome," I muttered. His gaze sharpened. "Why did you refuse me, really?" "Because I won't help you polish a throne if you're going to sit on the same bones," I said. "Because if you put one docile omega in your circle, every brute will claim you only mean to reshuffle their chains. If you put me there, you can't pretend you don't know better. You think I wanted you because you are docile?" He almost laughed. "Moongirl, you shouted no at me in front of every Alpha Lord. Do you truly not see?" "See what?" "That your refusal was the first honest thing spoken in that hall all night." He rose, paced once, and winced. The bandage at his shoulder had bled through in one corner. "You're hurt," I said. "An assassin's parting gift," Cale said lightly. "Northern steel, southern poison. It will heal. Does anyone else know?" "Corrin. The healer. Rhea suspects. Now you." His gaze met mine. "If the realms sense weakness before the blessing, factions like Terrans move. Omegas suffer first. And you're telling me this because—" His lips thinned. "Because you demanded truth. If I want you at my side, I must give it." I blinked. "Who said I'd ever stand beside you?" "I did," he said calmly. "And I rarely speak idly." Something hot and complicated twisted in my chest. "You can order anyone," I said. "Choose a highborn alpha. A pliant beta. Why fixate on an inconvenient omega?" "Because the laws I will swear are for omegas most of all," Cale said. "And I will not shape them without one who will tell me when I am wrong. You don't even know me." He studied me with unsettling focus. "I know you risked everything for a stranger." he said quietly. I know you refused the safest path because it tasted like a lie. For a king, that is instructive. Before I could answer, Corin's knuckles rapped the door. My king, he said. Apologies. The Hollow Ridge Alpha and Frostbane demand your judgment on a border quarrel. It brews like bad ale. Of course it does, Cale muttered, already fastening his shirt. He glanced at me. Come. I blinked. Why? Because this started in my hall with you, he said. Let us see if your sharp tongue cuts through maps as well as ceremony. I'm an Omega kitchen girl, I protested, following anyway. I don't know anything about treaties. You know when a thing is wrong, he said. That will do. The council chamber was a ring of stone and iron and sharp tempers. Taryn glowered over a spread map, stabbing a meaty finger at green-marked forest. Hollow Ridge's Alpha, a lean, scar-lined man named Gareth, stood opposite, jaw-locked. This valley falls to Frostbane as blood tithe, Taryn snarled. My men marked it. Your men crossed our dead, Gareth snapped. Our pups train there. Our elders harvest moonroot. You steal a quarter of our food and call it honoring the king. All eyes swung to Cale as he entered, with me at his shoulder. A ripple of disbelief hissed. The tithe, Cale said evenly, will be paid in coin and pelts. Not in land. Not in Omegas. I felt rather than saw Taryn stiffen. My king. Cale's gaze hardened to glass. You insult my peace and my protection in the same breath and dare haggle? He cut across Taryn's bluster with a flicked hand, attention settling on the map. That valley, he said, tapping the disputed mark, is Hollow Ridge's by every old treaty. You knew this. The old treaties are weak, Taryn growled. They coddle. They kept your grandfather from slaughter when Hollow Ridge shielded Frostbane's wounded, Gareth shot back. I swallowed. Voices rising. Taryn's eyes kept sliding to me, hateful and calculating. Lyra, Cale said suddenly. My heart stuttered. Yes? What happens if I strip Hollow Ridge of this valley? I looked at the inked line of river and trees, at the small huts marked along its edge. Pups go hungry. Elders lose the herbs that keep them through winter. Frostbane gains ground it doesn't need to prove a point. Omegas pay first. They always do. Cale nodded once, as if I'd confirmed what he already knew. The tide stands as I decreed. The valley remains Hollow Ridge's. Taryn, you will pay in trade goods and metals over 4 seasons. Refusal will be taken as rebellion. Shock. Outrage. A few smothered grins from southern delegates observing quietly at the wall. Taryn bared his teeth but bowed. As my king commands. When the Alphas had gone, Gareth paused beside me. Never thought I'd see the day an Omega's words weighed a border, he muttered. Hollow Ridge owes you. I didn't know what to do with that. So I just nodded. The fragile sense that maybe, Cale meant what he said didn't last. That night, Saran vanished. Eden, a Hollow Ridge runner and the closest thing I had to a friend, found me just after dusk, pale and wild-eyed. Her bed's cold, she whispered. Her cloak's gone. The guards say they saw nothing. Ice slashed through me. Frostbane's threats, Taryn's stare, the way some nobles had watched Saran as if insulted on principle by her safety. I stormed to Corin. Find her, I demanded. Every door, every passage. We're already searching, he said grimly. The king ordered it the moment he heard. We scoured the east tower, the servant halls, the gardens. No Saran. Only a smear of blood on a forgotten stair. Dungeons, I breathed. If someone wanted to send a message. Corin cursed. With me. The lower passages stank of damp stone and old fear. We followed torchlight and red drops to a half-rotted door. I shoved it open before Corin could stop me. Saran lay crumpled in the corner, tunic ripped, skin bruised. Hovering over her, knife in hand, was Lord Malric, Cale's cousin, a beta noble often seen at Taryn's elbow. He spun, sneer freezing as he saw me, then Kale and Corin behind. Too late. Malric spat. The realm will know its king kneels to Omegas. Kale's snarl shook dust from the stones. In a blur he had Malric pinned, knife skittering away. You dare touch one under my protection? Malric laughed, choking as Kale's fingers dug into his throat. You've already lost, cousin. Others move while we speak. Old law will rise in teeth and fire. Shouts thundered from above. The clash of steel, the howl of shifting wolves. Corin swore. My king, the main hall. Kale's gaze burned into Malric's. Bind him, he snapped, flinging him to Corin. He stands trial for treason. He turned to me. Get Saran to safety. No, Saran rasped, clutching my hand. Don't leave me alone. I'll go with her, Eden said from the doorway, breathless and stubborn. We'll take the hidden stair to the inner safe room. No one will touch her again. I hesitated. Above us, battle roared. Lyra, Kale said low. Go with them. I started this, I said. They're using her to break you. I won't hide while others bleed for my defiance. His eyes flashed. This isn't about you. Yes, I snapped. It is. It's about every Omega who's ever been taken. They're making an example out of your promise. Something like reluctant respect flickered. Then stay close, he growled. And do as I say. We rose into chaos. The palace had become a battlefield, loyal wolf guard against frostbane warriors and nobles wearing no colors but old cruelty. Tapestries burned. The air reeked of smoke and iron. Kale moved through it like a storm, every blow precise despite the drag of his wound. I kept at his back as ordered, dagger in hand, heart hammering so hard it hurt. You there! A rebel alpha lunged for me, eyes bright with zeal. The Omega whore that cursed us! Training my mother had whispered in secret took over. I ducked, slashed. My dagger scored his forearm. He roared, sword raising. And dropped as Corin's blade punched through his ribs from behind. Good instincts, the captain grunted. Stay lower. We pushed toward the shattered doors of the throne hall. Inside, a cluster of loyal guards were being driven back toward the dais by twice their number. At their center, Terran, blood-spattered and exultant. Coward king! Terran bellowed. Too weak to take a gift, too weak to rule! Kale vaulted broken stone, landing between rebels and throne. His growl cut the hall. Every eye turned. For a blessed second, shock froze them. They had expected him dead or trapped below. Stand down, Kale commanded. Lay down arms and live under my law. Or fall. Terran laughed and charged. Their clash was terrible and riveting. Terran had brute size and the cruel joy of hurting. Kale had precision and purpose and a poisoned shoulder. Each impact rang through my bones. Terran hammered at Kale's left side, reopening the wound. I saw crimson spread, saw Kale's movements slow by a fraction. Around them, fighting surged. Corin dragged me behind a toppled column. Stay. Don't say stay here. I snapped, then flinched as a blade whistled too close. I ducked on instinct. It missed my skull by a breath. A rebel lunged over the rubble. I jammed my dagger up, it bit flesh. He howled, reared back, then crumpled as an arrow from somewhere in the smoke found his throat. Through it all, my gaze flicked back to the dais. Terran slammed Kale to one knee. A chorus of rebel howls rose. See? Terran roared. The Omega King falls! No. Kale! I screamed without thinking. Left feint, high swing! He moved exactly as I shouted, blade snapping up to catch Terrance. Surprise flickered over the brute's face. In that hitch of arrogance, Kale pivoted, drove his sword up beneath Terran's ribs. Silence knifed through the chamber as the northern alpha coughed blood and crumpled. Kale straightened, swaying, crimson soaking his side. Yield! He roared, power shuddering the air. By the 4 moons, yield or die! One by one, weapons clattered to the floor. Not all, some rebels lunged again and were cut down in heartbeats. but enough surrendered that the tide broke. Loyalists surged, shackling, disarming. Smoke curled under the high rafters, carrying the scent of victory fouled with loss. Cale's knees buckled. I scrambled from behind the broken column, reaching him just as he slumped. His weight nearly crushed me. Corrin sprang to help, slinging the king's arm over his shoulders. "Chambers," I said. "Now. We must," Cale began. "You must not bleed out on your own floor," I snapped. "Trust your wolves for 5 breaths." He actually huffed a broken laugh. "Bossy Omega." I didn't let go until we'd hauled him to his rooms. The royal healer arrived in a flurry of herbs and scolding, cutting the blood-soaked shirt away. The wound was angry, ragged, dangerously close to tearing open completely. Poison burned around its edges. "You're fortunate," the healer muttered. "Another blow and the realm would be mourning." I watched Cale grit his teeth through the cleaning, refusing to be numbed fully, eyes never leaving mine. "You shouldn't have shouted," he said hoarsely when the healer stepped away. "You drew his focus. If I hadn't, you'd be cooling on that dais," I shot back. "You're welcome, Alpha King." He stared at me, something raw in his expression. "You risked your life. So did everyone who believed you," I countered. "I'm not special." "You are," he said quietly. "You made me move." Heat climbed my neck. I turned away under the pretense of rearranging bandages. Outside, Corrin murmured with messengers. Word filtered in: Frostbane warriors disarmed, Malric shackled, several nobles dead, others on their knees begging clemency. "Princess Irina?" Cale asked suddenly, struggling to sit up. "Where is she?" Rhea's grim voice answered from the doorway. "We caught her on the east wall with Malric's men." She knew. She ran only when the tide turned. The pain on Cale's face then hurt worse than the sight of his wound. "My blood," he whispered. "Your choice," Rhea said. "You're king. Decide if sentiment is worth a fractured realm." He closed his eyes. For once, I saw not the Alpha King, but a man who had lost too much. "You could have left," he said to me after Rhea retreated. "In the chaos. You could have run back to Hollowridge." "I said I wouldn't hide," I replied. "And I don't break my word. Not even to myself." Something like peace slid over his features. "Then hear mine," he said. "Tomorrow, at the moon blessing, I will end the practice of Omega tributes. I will carve it into oath and magic. Stand with me when I do." My heart thudded. Again, the choice that wasn't simple. "On one condition," I said. He raised a brow. "Name it, Omega." "I don't stand as your possession," I said. "Not your little Omega or your sign of mercy. I stand as Lyra of Hollowridge, who will call you out if you falter. And if you break your vows, I walk away before the whole realm." Rhea sucked in a breath. "You dare set terms?" "Yes," Cale said, eyes locked on mine. "She does." Silence fell sharp. "Done," he said. Rhea stared like she'd never seen him before. Then, slowly, a grim smile tugged at her mouth. "Perhaps we have a king after all," she murmured. That night, the dead were counted. Names of Wolfguard, servants, visiting warriors from allied packs who had stood their ground. Among the fallen were Hollowridge betas who'd thrown themselves against Frostbane's steel when the rebels came for the Omega Wing. I went to the barracks myself, slid my hand over cold fingers, whispered thanks they'd never hear. Saran slept under guard in a safe chamber now, alive, though haunted. I sat with her until her breaths evened. "You'll change it," she mumbled once. "You and the Alpha King." "We'll try," I answered. Dawn found the castle scrubbed, bandaged, braced. Banners replaced the torn ones, this time all 5 territories braided together. The great scar through the throne hall floor where Terran had fallen was left visible, a warning in stone. Outside the keep, wolves from every pack thronged the courtyards and streets, demanding news. Rumors flew: a tempted crew, dead Frostbane Alpha, Omegas sheltered by the king, the Hollowridge girl who had shouted no. In Cale's chambers, The healer tied off the last of his new stitches with exasperated clucks. "Do not strain them," she warned, "or I'll carve my warnings on your forehead." When she left, I stood by the window, staring at the gathering crowds. "If you do this," I said, "there's no going back. They'll call you the Omega King. They'll say you broke the spine of Alpha Law. If protecting my people breaks something that deserved breaking," Kale said, carefully rising to his feet, "so be it. I'm your people now?" I asked, half teasing, half afraid. "You stood between me and cowardice," he said simply. "Yes, Lyra. You are my people." Idiotic warmth sparked in my chest. I stomped on it. "Then don't make me regret betting on you." Preparation for the blessing was a blur of arguments. Rhea, Corin, Gareth of Hollowridge, and a dark-skinned southern alpha named Dallin all crammed into Kale's solar. "You must purge every traitor tonight," Rhea urged. "Hang them from the outer wall. Show the realm you do not flinch." "Blood feeds old stories," Dallin countered. "Better to break their power and bind their lands to your new law. Dead men cannot adapt, living ones can be watched." "Some deserve a rope," Gareth growled. "But others were barely more than pups shoved forward by their sires." Kale listened, jaw tight. Then he looked at me. "You've seen what they did to Omegas," he said. "What justice do you ask?" "A strange, heavy thing, having a king ask you that." "The ones who orchestrated this," I said slowly. "Who ordered attacks on Omegas, who carved old cruelty into banners, they chose death or exile for them. But the ones dragged along? Give them a chance to swear to your new law. Make loyalty to equal protection their price for pardon. Mercy?" Rhea scoffed. "Leverage," I said. "Make them speak your vow with their own mouths. Oaths matter, don't they?" Kale's mouth curved. "They do," he murmured. "Especially tonight." The traitors' judgments were announced that afternoon in the Scarred Hall. Malric and 3 other chief conspirators were sentenced to execution at dawn. Lesser rebels knelt to swear new oaths, to obey the king's law that no Omega was to be taken as tribute, that harm done to Omegas would be punished as if done to any Alpha heir. A few spat in defiance and chose exile instead. Princess Irina stood alone before the throne, chains at her wrists. Hurt carved Kale's face raw. "You bled beside me in the wars," he said. "You saw what they did. Yet you opened my gates to it here. I saw you soften," she said bitterly. "Saw you stare at that Omega like she mattered more than our blood. A king cannot be ruled by pity. A king is ruled by law," Kale said. "By duty. By choice. Not by the old rot that made us monsters." He exiled her to a remote shrine under guard, stripped of title. Too harsh for some, too kind for others. For him, I saw, it hurt more than any blade. That night, when the castle lanterns blazed and the moon rose full and heavy, the blessing began. They gave me a gown the color of deep water, simple and clean. Eden braided silver threads through my pale hair, fingers trembling. "You don't have to do this," she whispered. "I told him I would," I said. "On my terms. And if they tear you apart for it? Then at least they heard me first." The great hall glowed with hundreds of candles. Representatives from every territory filled it, along with warriors and servants, and, for the first time I'd ever seen, Omegas standing openly among them. Saran sat near the front beside Gareth and Dallin, cloak fastened with a new pin bearing the royal crest. The obsidian throne remained, but before it the floor had been set with a wide silver circle, etched with moon sigils and old runes. The blessing ring. Kale waited at its edge in black and silver, circlet on his brow, stitches hidden. When I entered on Captain Corin's arm, the hall exhaled a single, shocked breath. An Omega in the blessing ring. "Remember," Eden whispered at my back. "No bending." I stepped to Kale's side. He didn't reach for me. Didn't touch. Just met my gaze. "Still no?" he asked under his breath. "I stand because I chose," I said. "Don't forget it." His eyes warmed. "I won't." The priest spoke the old words, voice wobbling when he reached the point where tradition dictated the king vowed to guard bloodlines and uphold the natural order of Alpha above all. Here, Kale said, cutting in, voice steady and ringing. The words change. Gasps. The priest froze. I, Kale of the Four Moons, he said, swear by Fang and blood and the watching goddess that in this realm, all wolves are bound first by their humanity, not their designation. That no Omega shall be given, traded, or taken as property. That no Alpha's strength excuses cruelty. That law will shield the smallest as fiercely as the crown. The silver circle flared faintly. Runes woke. He went on, each vow a stone thrown through the old order, equal right to refuse bonds, to learn letters, to hold work outside breeding dens, to appeal directly to the crown when wronged. Rhea watched with arms folded, grimly approving. Dallin nodded once. Some northern lords hissed like overturned snakes. And, Kale finished, louder still, I swear to keep those near me who will speak truth, even when it shames me. To remember that an Alpha king who cannot bear an Omega's no is no king at all. His gaze flicked to me on the last line. The hall knew it. Moonlight poured through the high windows, spilling like liquid silver over the circle. The old magic recognized new words. The air thrummed. The king has spoken, the priest said weakly. Let the companion answer. This was where, in every story, a chosen mate or political bride pledged obedience and devotion. Where an Omega, if one stood here at all, vowed to be soft and grateful. My mother's charm was warm at my throat. I stepped forward, fingers curled at my sides, and let my voice carry. I am Lyra of Hollow Ridge, I said. Omega by scent, kitchen girl by trade, troublemaker by recent habit. A ripple of uneasy laughter. I stand here not as ornament or offering, but as proof that an Omega's voice can reach a king's ear without being silenced. I glanced at Kale, then out at the sea of faces. I accept these vows from the Alpha King, not as a gift, but as the bare minimum owed to every soul in his realm. And I swear this, so long as he keeps them, I will stand beside him and speak when others bite their tongues. If he breaks them, I will walk out of this circle and call him oath breaker under the same moon that binds him. The magic shivered cold and bright. It liked that. The hall erupted, not in neat applause but in a storm of sound. Shouted praise, furious snarls, stunned silence. Kale stepped closer, not touching me, but near enough that his warmth brushed my arm. Lyra, he murmured, you just threatened your king in front of all his court. I warned you I would, I said. Still time to call for someone quieter. He huffed that half-laugh. Never. The priest, to his credit, recovered enough to complete the ritual. The covenant is witnessed. He intoned. The moon binds these words. Let strength and mercy walk together, or both be broken. Moonlight flared, blinding for a heartbeat, then softened. The silver circle beneath our feet glowed with faint, enduring luminescence, the mark of an oath sealed. Kale turned fully to me then, the hall watching. The night you shouted no, he said quietly, you shoved me off a safe path and onto a right one. I swallowed. You chose to walk it. Yes, he said. But only because you showed me where it led. May I? He asked. Not an order. A request. 3 simple letters handing me the power to damn or bless 1,000 whispers. For a moment my heart warred with every lesson beaten into Omegas. Don't be seen, don't be wanted, don't be foolish. Then I thought of Saran alive upstairs, of new laws stitched in moonlight, of a king who'd bared his wound because I'd asked if he was hurting. Yes, I said. He bent and brushed his mouth over mine. Not a claiming, not a brand. A promise offered in public daylight, gentle and brief. The circle flared once more, then settled. Gasps, cheers, curses. The realm's future bending around one quiet contact. When he drew back, there was wonder and terror, and something startlingly soft in his eyes. Whatever they call me after this, he murmured, I'd rather be the Omega King than another butcher crowned in bones. Good, I said, throat tight. Because that's the only king I agreed to stand beside. In the days that followed, nothing magically fixed itself. Frostbane splintered without Terran, half its elders spitting at Kale's decrees, half their young staring toward High Rock with wary hope. Trade arguments turned uglier before they turned fairer. Gareth returned to Holleridge carrying copies of the new edicts, promising to build a school where Omegas could learn to read the laws that governed them. Dallin sent southern scholars to help. Some nobles refused to let the papers cross their borders. Kale began drafting consequences. Through it all I worked. I sat in councils, listening and speaking when silence would have been easier. I walked the Omega quarters, hearing their fear and skepticism and reluctant gratitude. I wrote letters for those who never had a way to reach the throne. Many nights, I ended bone-weary by the library fire, ink on my fingers, head on the table. You could take a title, Rhea told me once. Advisor. Voice of the low. It would make the alphas more comfortable, if they could put you in a box. I've spent my whole life in boxes, I said. I'm busy prying the lids off. Kale and I argued. A lot. About how far, how fast, whose heads to take, whose to bend, how to enforce a law in lands that hated it. Sometimes his temper snapped sharp. Sometimes my fear did. You cannot drag the entire realm at once, he said after one particularly heated council. It will break. If you don't pull hard enough, they'll never move, I retorted. And Omegas will keep disappearing in the gaps while you wait for everyone to feel ready. We sat in brittle silence by the window, moonlight silvering the maps scattered between us. I don't know how to do this, he admitted finally, voice rough. No king has. Good, I said. Means you might not repeat their mistakes perfectly. His shaky laugh eased something tight in my chest. Stay, he said softly. Help me figure it out. I'll stay until you give me a reason not to, I answered. You promised, remember? You break your oaths, I walk. And if I don't? I hesitated. Then I suppose we build that future you keep raging about. There were threats, of course. Anonymous notes promising I'd be dragged from his side. Whispers that I'd bewitched the king. Twice, poison gifts reached the Omega wing and were intercepted by sharp-nosed guards. We knew it would come, I told Saran as we burned the last of the tainted wine. They're scared. Of him? She asked. Of us, I said. Of the idea that we count. Kale doubled my guard and snarled at anyone who so much as glared at me too long. I snarled back. If you wrap me in steel, you prove them right, I said. I'm not your fragile emblem. You are the blade they want, he said. That makes you precious. I'm a person, I said. Not treasure. Remember your own law, Kale. He flinched, then nodded. You're right. Again. Travel followed. If the realm wouldn't come to High Rock's law, we would bring the law to them. We rode to river towns where Omegas hid their scent under ash. To mountain holds where girls were still weighed like coin. In each place, Kale called the packs together and read the new decrees himself, voice carrying over stone and snow. This is not a request, he'd say. It is my will as Alpha King, bound under moon and magic. Some alphas bowed, others scoffed. Those who scoffed learned quickly that trade with High Rock dried like split bone, that their warriors were no longer welcome in shared patrols. A few prodded further, and found their borders watched by Rhea's hard-eyed soldiers. I listened to the grumbling. Sat with Omega women in smoky kitchens and under starlit roofs, explaining what the vows meant, what recourse they had. You believe him? One asked. I've seen him bleed for it, I said. I've seen him let me shout no in his own hall. It's a start. One night in a rain-lashed outpost, a young alpha spit at my feet. You're why this is happening, he snarled. One Omega opening her mouth, and suddenly the world turns upside down. I wiped his spit away with my boot. If your world falls because one Omega spoke, I said, maybe it needed the shaking. Kale, watching from the doorway, didn't interfere. Later he murmured, "You terrify them more than I do. I'm 5'0" and trip over rugs," I said. "You also made me choose who to be," he answered. "Power shaped is more frightening than power wielded blindly." The bond between us wasn't sudden, or simple. It grew in arguments and shared exhaustion, in nights tracing maps together, in quiet mornings when he let himself laugh. Sometimes, late, when the castle finally slept, I'd catch him staring at his scarred shoulder, at the faint glow still coiled in the silver circle in the hall below. "Do you ever regret it?" I asked once. "Tying your rein to this?" "To you?" he asked. "To the law," I said, flustered. He shook his head. "I regret not doing it sooner." "And to me?" I pressed, before I could lose nerve. He looked at me for a long time. "I think," he said slowly, "it was never really a choice. You were the only one who told me no and meant be better instead of be weaker. What else could I do but listen? The first year under the new covenant ended with fewer missing Omegas than anyone could remember. Not none, old habits die slow, but fewer. Cases reached High Rock. Kale ruled, sometimes with fury, sometimes with tired patience. We built an office, laughably cramped, for petitions. Eden ran it with ruthless kindness. Saran trained as a healer. Finn served as a runner between villages and court. Rhea hammered the worst of the nobility into a shape that could exist in this new order or sent them packing. On the night marking the Covenant's anniversary, the people lit lanterns from the western cliffs to the eastern sea, silver and gold winking like stars fallen to earth. "You did that," I told Kale as we stood on the balcony, watching lights drift. "We did," he corrected. "I without you would be another war story with a bloodier ending." I elbowed him. Flattery, Alpha King? How undignified. We weren't safe. Peace never meant safe. Dissent still simmered in pockets, waiting for weakness. I still slept with a knife within reach. Kale still trained every morning, pushing his mending shoulder. But we had something I'd never seen before, a realm where Omegas could imagine futures that weren't cages. A toddler with soft scent barreled into my knees one afternoon in the courtyard, chased by a mortified beta mother. "I'm sorry, my lady." "I'm no lady," I said, scooping the pup up before he fell. "Just Lyra." He wanted to see the brave Omega from the blessing circle, she confessed, cheeks pink. "Keeps drawing circles on the floor." I swallowed sudden, stupid tears. "Tell him," I said, "that one day he'll write better laws than ours." It wasn't until the second year, during our rare quiet evening, that Kale asked again. We sat on the floor of the library, backs against opposite shelves, sharing stolen honey cakes. Papers littered the table above, trade agreements, school charters, a draft decree about mixed-rank councils. "Lyra," he said. "Stay," he said. No kingly flourish. Just a man's voice, rough with something that sounded like hope and fear braided. "Not just as my conscience. As my partner. My equal. My mate if you'll have me, with the same right to walk away you've always claimed." My heart tripped. "You're asking an Omega to be queen." "I'm asking Lyra," he said. I thought of chains gilded and iron, of every Omega ever told her worth began and ended in serving quietly. I thought of our endless arguments, our shared stubbornness, the way his shoulders seemed to set easier when I was near, like some weight shifted. "Will saying yes put a collar on every other Omega?" I asked. "Will they say, see, the only way up is if a king wants you?" "Not if we keep building other paths," he said. "Not if you keep biting my ankles when I forget." I laughed, startled. "Romantic." "I don't have pretty words," he said. "Only this. With you beside me, I am less likely to become the monster I was bred to be. And his hands flexed, searching. "I love the way you never let me be comfortable when I'm wrong." Heat stung my eyes. "You were doing fine with I love," I whispered. He went still. Then, very carefully, "I love you. As my equal. As my chosen. As the Omega who told me no and meant it." Then yes, I said. On one condition. His groan was half laugh. Another? Of course, I said. We don't call me queen. He blinked. What then? Moonsworn, I said slowly. Or nothing at all. I'm Lyra first. A smile broke over his face, sharp and bright. Lyra Moonsworn, he said, as if testing how it tasted. Very well. We sealed that promise not in a silver circle with the world watching, but with a kiss among shelves that had held more kings' lies than truths. This one, at least, felt real. Years would pass before stories turned us to legend, the Alpha King who knelt to no one but his own law, the Omega who rewrote the blessing. They'd polish the edges, sand down the messy arguments, the fear, the compromises, the nights we wondered if the realm would tear apart under the strain of change. But this is what mattered. When a frostbane pup was born with a scent like mine, his parents did not flinch. They sent word to Hyrock not to hide him, but to ask how best to teach him his worth. When a Hollow Ridge girl refused a forced bond, the local alpha backed her with the weight of the covenant instead of breaking her. When an old lord tried to buy an Omega bride, his own heirs dragged him before their council and recited Kale's vows until he choked on them. And in the halls of Hyrock, Omegas walked without dropping their eyes. On the 10th anniversary of the moon blessing, lanterns burned brighter than ever. Gray threaded Rhea's hair. Corin finally let himself laugh in public. Dallin's daughter argued with me over drafting an apprenticeship law for mixed-rank packs. Saran ran a healer's hall where no one was turned away. Kale stood beside me on the balcony, cloak tugged by the wind, fingers laced with mine. Do you regret saying no that first night? He asked. I watched the sea of lights. If I had said yes, easy and grateful, I said, you'd have had a silent Omega at your side, a polished ceremony, and all the old rot tucked politely beneath the floor. He grimaced. Probably. I regret nothing, I said. You. He lifted our joined hands, pressing his mouth to my knuckles. Only that I ever imagined ruling without you. Sometimes young Omegas came to Hyrock asking how to do what I'd done. How to find an Alpha King and change him. Wrong question, I always told them. Don't look for a king to save you. Stand where you are and say no more. If the ones with crowns listen, good. If they don't, we'll make better crowns. One wide-eyed girl frowned. But what if my Alpha gets angry? He will, I said gently. Change angers those who fed on the old way. That's why there are more of us now to stand beside you. You're not alone in the circle anymore. There were still losses. Assassins tried again and again. One came close enough that Kale spent another month blinking against the burn of poison, while I read reports aloud between bouts of fury. Rest, I ordered, arms folded. You never rest, he grumbled. Because you're a terrible patient. He squinted at me. You know, I'm the Alpha King. And I'm the one who will throw you off this balcony if you tear your stitches, I said. He laughed despite himself, then winced. Bossy Omega, he muttered fondly. When our first child was born, dark-haired, big-eyed, sent shimmering somewhere between Alpha and Omega, the court held its breath. What will you call them? Rhea asked. What will you tell the realm they are? Kale looked at the tiny wrinkled creature howling in his arms and said, Mine. Ours. Theirs. I snorted. Dramatic. We'll tell them, I said, smoothing a hand over our child's head, that they're a person first. They can choose the rest. Outside, the lanterns of another blessing night flickered. I wondered, not for the first time, what my mother would say if she could see this. Probably I told you so, with that small, fierce smile. Somewhere in Frostbane, a grizzled warrior lit a single lantern for the Omega sister he'd watched taken long ago, whispering thanks that no more would go that way. Somewhere in Hollowridge, pups learned to read from tattered copies of the Moonsworn Covenant. They turned the pages with hands smudged in dirt and promise. Somewhere in the south, Dallin's council debated expanding land rights for unmated Omegas who farmed their own soil. They signed off with a flourish, citing the Lyra clause. I laughed for an hour when the letter reached me. Look at you, Kale teased. A footnote in law. More useful than a portrait. I shot back. We grew older. Scars multiplied. The realm flexed around new shapes of power. Not every story ended kindly. Some packs clung to old cruelties until forced by lack of allies to relent. Some Omegas chose safe paths, and that, too, was their right. Through all of it, whenever fear whispered that the ground might crumble, I remembered that first circle of light and the sound of my own voice saying no to an Alpha King. It had felt like leaping off a cliff. Turned out, there was a world down there. Do you ever miss being invisible? I asked Kale once, on a rare quiet night as we watched snow fall beyond the glass. Invisible? He snorted. I was born a banner. I mean, I said, do you ever wish you'd taken the easy road? Let them hand you Omegas and praises and never picked a fight with your own court. He considered. Sometimes, he admitted. When the weight grinds bone. When another petition of hurt lands on my desk. When I watch you carry scars for a fight that began with my crown. I leaned into him. The fight started long before you, I said. You just stopped pretending not to see it. If there is any lesson in the path we carved, it is this. The moment that seems like the end, like the misstep that will crush you, might be the hinge instead. The axis the world tilts on. An Omega spoke out in a hall where she was meant to be silent. An Alpha King listened when he could have killed. Both could have chosen easier roles, grateful victim, gracious tyrant. Instead, we chose each other's discomfort. We chose the long, brutal work of change over the brief, satisfying blaze of punishment. Years from now, bards will sing sweeter versions. They'll say I strode fearless into that first circle, that Kale's heart changed in a single kiss, that the realm bowed overnight to a gentler law. The truth is harder and more important. I was terrified. He was stubborn. We failed small and often. We argued over commas and decrees. We hurt people we were trying to help and had to mend it. But each time, we returned to the same vows. No Omega as property. No strength without responsibility. No crown without answer to the smallest voice. When he forgot, I reminded him. When I faltered, he held fast. The circle we stood in never really closed. So when people ask how an Omega came to stand beside an Alpha King, I tell them this. He asked. I said no. And because he listened, truly listened, my no became the foundation for every yes that followed. We walked out of that silver circle not as savior and saved, not as king and pet, but as two stubborn creatures who chose to drag a world towards something better, one vow at a time. That is the only kind of story worth living inside.